It's incredible some of the things people believe that only Utahns say. Take the use of what linguists call double modals, like, I used to could do it, or he might could fix it. And I'm sure a lot of you cringe when you hear those, but they are part of English. And not just the English in Utah or in the US. You'll find them in Britain and Ireland and even Australia as well. So one of my big motivations for studying Utah dialect and producing these episodes is to cut through the bull. I really want to separate the myths from the facts. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to make systematic observations and get lots of data. Now, there's been a good chunk of good research done in Utah, but it has a few weaknesses. The first is that too often it has just looked at a handful of Utahns. The other issue is that most studies have just considered the speech of Utahns from a small portion of the state, most often from the Wasatch Front, which comprises the most populated part of the state. What we need is data from all 29 counties in Utah. You need to realize that some counties in Utah are pretty sparsely populated. Take Daggett County, for example, with about 900 residents, or Paiute County with about 1,500. In fact, 9 Utah counties actually have only about 10,000 residents or less. Now, in the ideal linguistic world, I'd have all the time and money I needed to travel to all 29 counties and record a representative sample of residents. But by the time I finished doing that, it would be time for me to retire. Instead, I chose to invite Utahns to take a survey online. How did I get people to take it? Well, I went to Facebook and joined all sorts of groups related to all the counties. I told the administrators I was interested in the speech in their area, and most of them were okay with it. However, my activities raised some alarms, and the Facebook police sent me a nasty message banning me from posting on Facebook, but just for a little while. It was worth it though, because about 1,700 Utahns from all 29 counties generously gave me of their time and their input. On top of that, it took only 2 weeks to get most of the responses. Man, with all that data, I felt like a kid in a candy store. In the survey, I asked people all kinds of questions about what words and phrases they use and how they pronounce things. Let me give you an example. So, growing up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I'd listen to the discourses of church leaders, many of whom were in their 70s, 80s, even 90s. And it always struck me when they talk about things like treasures in heaven, or the measure of a man, or earthly pleasures. Everyone I knew said pleasure, treasure, and measure, not pleasure, treasure, and measure. I just kind of figured it was an old man thing, but I had to check it out in the survey. To study it, I included questions in the survey like this. So how do you pronounce the highlighted part of measure, measure? And they could answer, it sounds more like the meh and met, or the may and mate. What I found is that the A vowel isn't all that common in the state. Only 16% of the people answered measure, 9% treasure, and 9% pleasure. But just like I suspected, it's a bit more frequent among older Utahns. The gray bars are the I pronunciations. It is also slightly more common outside of the extended Wasatch Front. And by the way, non-Utah speakers were born outside of the state but lived the majority of their life inside Utah. Now let me be more specific about what I mean by the extended and limited Wasatch Front. Here's a map of the areas I call the limited and extended Wasatch Front. The extended Wasatch Front includes the limited Wasatch Front. The Wasatch Front is the most populated region of the state and the part of the state that has more outside influence in terms of people moving in from out of state. The fact that the Maysure pronunciation is less common there and more common in the rest of the state is one thing that makes me think that the Maysure pronunciation used to be more common. This is especially true when you couple it with the fact that it is more used by the older generation. My guess is that Maysure, Playsure, and Traysure may go away of the 8-track tape. Do you know what that is? I think it'll die out in the next 20 to 40 years or so. We'll look at more results of the survey in other episodes, so stay tuned.